Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
You ready for the word?
Yes, sir.
Let's go back to 3 John, please. And again, we offer our congratulations to Luke and Heather, who will be wed tomorrow. What an exciting and awesome day that is going to be. 3 John, verse 1. The elder unto the well-beloved Gaius, whom I love in the truth. Beloved, I wish above all things that you may prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. For I rejoiced greatly when the brethren came and testified of the truth that is in you, even as you walk in the truth. I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. So John refers to Gaius as well-beloved Gaius. When he addresses him, he addressed him as the beloved. And then he tells us this about Gaius. Gaius was a man that walked in truth. So Gaius is a man who walked in truth and yet was lovable. And that's the point we've been on the last 2 or 3 weeks. It can be done. You can walk in truth and be lovable. Not everybody does it, but it can be done. Many years ago, I was talking to my dad about a man whose disposition seemed to have changed, at least to me, over the years. And when I say changed, I don't mean for the better. And I said to Dad, he's become a grumpy old man. Dad knew him longer and knew him better than I did. And Dad said, no, he hasn't. He hasn't become grumpy in his old age. He was a grumpy man that got old. See, there is a difference between the two. Well, not everybody who walks in truth is also lovable. In fact, it sometimes seems that it makes them ornery and obstinate. Sometimes it seems like it makes them stubborn, mean, hateful, and arrogant. But you have to wonder, did walking in truth make them that way? Or were they already that way and they began to walk in truth? Either way, Gaius shows us that it doesn't have to be that way, right? Walking in truth should not result in anybody becoming unlovable. And if we are unlovable before we started walking in truth, the truth is walking in the truth should result in our becoming more lovable. If we follow the teachings of Torah, if we follow Yahweh's instruction, it should make us more lovable human beings, not less lovable. But it takes effort, and it takes effort to be a lovable person. Let me tell you why. It takes effort because of several factors. Number one, sometimes people have this misconception that others have to love them and accept them just the way they are, and so they don't care about working on their personality. They've got a misconception. You're obligated to love me just the way I am. Well, that's nonsense. That's hogwash. No one has to like us. If we want to be lovable, most of the time the success or the failure of that falls on us. Not always. Sometimes you encounter people who are just not loving, no matter how lovable you are, right? There are some people that are just not loving. But in most cases, the success or the failure of our being lovable falls on us. So it takes a conscious effort on our part to become lovable. It doesn't happen automatically when you're born, and it doesn't happen automatically when you're born again. So it takes effort, number one, because there are people who have the mistaken idea that others have to like them, and so they don't work on it. Number two, it takes an effort for us to become lovable because knowledge puffs up. We read that in 1 Corinthians chapter 8. It says this, knowledge puffs up, but charity edifies. That's in verse 1. Verse 2 says this, if any man thinks that he knows anything, he knows nothing yet as he ought to know. So knowledge puffs up. We awaken, and awakening is awesome. The veil gets lifted from our hearts, and we begin to see things that we've never seen before in our Bibles, and we begin to learn things that we didn't know, and we begin to learn that there are things we should know that or should have known that our denominations didn't teach us, our pastors didn't teach us, our Sunday school teachers didn't teach us. Actually, we find out sometimes they didn't want us to know. Right? That they told us that we didn't need to know, and they pushed certain things aside. But Yahweh in His mercy and by the great love wherewith He has loved us, invited us to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven. And we set out on a quest to know. And our story is the story of many, many others. You're not the only one. I'm not the only one who's been on this quest to know more and more about the truths in Torah. There is a hunger and a thirst for knowledge of the truth that's being stirred up in the hearts of people all across the land. Yes, sir. With this thirst and hunger for truth, though, we have to stop and listen to the warning that is given to us in 1 Corinthians 8. It is great that we have a hunger and a thirst for truth. But we are warned in 1 Corinthians 8, knowledge puffs up. It doesn't say it might puff up. It doesn't say it's possible it'll puff up. It says knowledge puffs up. And so as we pursue knowledge, we've got to be cautious about not allowing it to make us arrogant or mean-spirited. Knowledge puffs up, and understand this when you read 1 Corinthians 8, that you could add this phrase accurately. Knowledge puffs up without cause. We become puffed up, but we really have no reason to be puffed up. Because the very next verse says this, if any man thinks he knows anything, he doesn't know anything yet as he ought to know. So no matter how much we think we know and how much that might cause us to feel puffed up, we have no cause to be puffed up because there's still so much that we don't know, and we don't know everything. Right? No matter how much knowledge you have, you should not be puffed up. So we have to be on guard against being haughty, proud, arrogant, condescending, rude, mean, hateful, just because we happen to have some knowledge that we didn't have before. All right? God shows us that we can have knowledge, walk in truth, be lovable. But so does our Messiah, right? Yes. Our Messiah shows us that you can have all knowledge, walk in perfect obedience to Torah, and still be lovable. Right? Well, that doesn't mean that we have to or that we should ever compromise in any way. When I talk about being lovable, I'm not talking about compromise. We're talking about walking in truth and being lovable. We are to do both, and we can do both. So today what I want to do, I want to talk about how we balance the two. How we walk in truth and remain lovable. There's a correct way to do it. Go to Matthew chapter 5. Matthew 5. I'm not sure this thing is broadcasting. We're live, so I'm going to leave it alone. All right, are you there? Matthew 5?
Yes, sir.
Look at verse 43. You have heard that it has been said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you, that you may be the children of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love them which love you, what reward have you? Do not even the publicans the same? And if you salute your brethren only, what do you more than others? Do not even the publicans so? Be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father who is in heaven is perfect. So I want you to focus right now on verse 44. It says to love who? Say it out loud.
Your enemies.
Love your enemies. Now, people have taken this verse and other things our Messiah said and twisted them to mean that we're to have open arms, open hearts, and open doors to the world. Churches have opened their doors to the world and said, come on in. We're not going to judge you. We're not going to make you feel uncomfortable. We're going to make sure you never feel guilty, never feel condemned. We're going to accept you just the way you are. That approach is not what I'm talking about when I say that we need to be lovable. What's the problem with that approach? Simply this: people coming in are never being exhorted to walk in truth. So we're talking about walking in truth and being lovable, not just being lovable or being loving. So what happens when people have this approach where you just come on in, we're going to accept you as you are, you're never going to be made to feel guilty or condemned. What they end up doing is creating social clubs where people come and they have a sense of belonging and they have programs for their children and they hear some little sermonette on how awesome and wonderful they are and they're encouraged and they're sent right back out the door. That approach is not what I'm talking about. It's a twisting and a perversion of Scripture to think that that's what assembling together should be about. Listen carefully to what the Messiah said. He said, love who? Tell me one more time. So what is he acknowledging by that statement? You're going to have enemies. He didn't say, why can't we all just get along? He didn't say, love everybody. He could have said that, but he didn't. He said, love your enemies. What is an enemy? An enemy is an adversary. It is one who is hostile and opposes you. One who is hostile and opposes you. So what he's saying is love your adversaries. So that tells me we're going to have adversaries. He's saying love those who are hostile towards you and toward whom you will be hostile. Love those who oppose you and those whom you are going to oppose. Love them. If we walk in the truth, we're going to have enemies. There are going to be people who are hostile and who oppose us and the truth we're walking in. There are going to be people who are adversaries of truth and therefore they become our adversaries. And if we walk in truth, there should be people whom we oppose. There should be people who we are adversaries to. The old adage is still true that said that evil men do good when good men do nothing. Evil thrives when we do not understand what it means to oppose. There are times that we have to stand up and oppose. It's not unbiblical to oppose. It is not unbiblical to fight against humanistic attempts to squash out truth. We're commanded to contend for the truth, and you cannot contend for the truth casually. Contending for the truth takes every fiber of your being. Contending for the truth means there are times that people are going to say all manner of evil against you. There are times when you're contending for the truth, you're going to look mean and hateful and rude when you're not. You're just trying to stop and oppose the promotion of humanism over the truth of Torah. That's all you're trying to do. There are times when you will have enemies. Our example is our Messiah. He did not hate his adversaries, but make no mistake about it, he opposed them with every fiber of his being. And he didn't mind calling them out when he had to call them out. When they wanted to twist the truth of Torah, he'd tell them who they were. He'd tell them, you don't know the Torah, you don't know the Word, you don't know Yahweh, you don't know His power. He would call them out over and over again because it was necessary. Just because we oppose someone doesn't mean we have to hate them. We're told not to. And that's where the world tries to twist it. Every time believers stand up, they say, you're filled with so much hate. I don't hate you. And if there's enmity between us, you're causing it. If there's enmity between us, it's because you're trying to do away with the teachings of Torah. I'm not opposing you, you're opposing me, and therefore I have to stand my ground, right? You understand the distinction. Just because we oppose someone doesn't mean that we hate them. No hate at all. But just because we don't hate them doesn't mean we won't oppose them. We can oppose them. We should oppose them. We look at our adversaries and we never give in to the emotion of hate, but neither do we give in to the temptation to compromise. So let's tie all of this together. We're going to have enemies, and we should oppose them. You know, soon here we're going to be observing Hanukkah. Hanukkah commemorates how Mattathias and his family and a few followers fought against the entire Seleucid Empire, whose intent was to stamp out truth. So Hanukkah becomes a yearly reminder to us that there are enemies to truth in every generation, and it is incumbent upon every generation to stand against those that would try to eliminate truth. We have a responsibility no different than the responsibility that Mattathias and his family had in their day and time. The challenge for us then is to balance being lovable and being a soldier in the kingdom. We've got to be a soldier in the kingdom, but be lovable. And a soldier in the kingdom understands who his fierceness is directed at and who and what he's protecting. He doesn't deal with the people behind him the same way he deals with the people in front of him. Are you with me? So we have to, in the kingdom, make that same distinction. If we don't understand who to oppose and who to be lovable with, we're going to have casualties of friendly fire. And we don't want that. Right? Help me. We don't want that, right?
That's right.
All right. So the challenge is to be lovable and be a soldier in the kingdom. So let me offer a few thoughts that might help us accomplish that balance. We're going to go back to Acts 15, where we were last week. Last week we looked at this passage and we talked about how the pagan Gentiles were being born again and they were coming into the truth. And a Gentile being born again, coming into the truth, is no longer a Gentile. He's an ex-Gentile. He's now been grafted in to Israel. So he's no longer a Gentile, but he's been born again and he's coming into the truth. These people who once worshipped sun deities and fertility deities on Sunday have now turned to Yahweh, the one true Elohim, by and through his Son, the Messiah. And they're showing up at the synagogues on the Sabbath to learn Torah. Problem is, they're showing up and they know nothing. Or they know very little. They don't know how to say Shabbat Shalom. They've spent their entire life never saying Shabbat Shalom. They don't know what that means. They don't know Moshe from Malachi. They don't know Yom Teruah from a gummy bear. They don't know Torah from toothpaste. They knew nothing or very little when they're being converted and coming over. The Jews who had been taught Torah all of their lives and had also accepted Yeshua as the Messiah had far more knowledge of how a believer should conduct themselves than did these converted Gentiles who are now showing up. And having the synagogue now being flooded with these new converts was causing a conflict of major proportion. The Jews are being offended by these people who know nothing. And these ex-Gentiles, these converted Gentiles, are being made to feel horrible because they don't know anything. They don't know how to talk. They don't know how to behave. And so there is a great conflict taking place. Acts 15 was a convention that was called before all the apostles to find a solution to this, because there had to be a solution. And the solution was threefold. James says there is a threefold solution to this. Number one, he said, stop harassing and annoying these Gentiles. My sentence is that we trouble them no more means stop harassing and annoying them. Number two, he said, give them room to grow. Number three, he said, we have to protect the assembly from all outside influence. So let's look at that. Acts 15, look in verse 19. Wherefore my sentence is that we trouble not them which from among the Gentiles are turned to Yahweh. It's amazing that people take that verse out of context, that people take that verse and twist it and say, well, my sentence is that the Gentiles don't have to keep Torah. That is not what he said. You look that word trouble up, it means to harass and annoy people. He said the first thing that I want you to do is stop harassing these people and stop annoying them. These people in the assembly who don't know as much as you, leave them alone. Then look in verse 21. For Moshe of old time hath in every city them that preach him, being read in the synagogue every Sabbath day. So his second command is, give them room to grow. Give them room to grow. James said they will have Moshe preach to them every Sabbath day. Give them an opportunity to come in and to see it and to hear it. Notice the advice that James gives is not, hey, since we have all these new converts coming in who don't know anything about Torah, let's quit reading it on the Sabbath. That's not his instruction, is it? He didn't say, you know what, guys, we might need to change the way we worship because it makes them feel uncomfortable because they don't know what we're doing or why we're doing it. They don't know our terms. Maybe we ought to find a way to relate to them where they are. James did not say that. He did not say try to make the service more appealing to them. He did not say try to make it more like something they're used to. What he did say is give them room and opportunity. They're going to come in here every Sabbath. So what's he expecting of them? He's expecting them to observe Sabbath. He's expecting them to be in the synagogue. And he's expecting them to listen to what's being taught and preached. To learn it, to keep it, and to do it. Right? Yes. But he said, we have been taught it from the time we were born. They haven't. You're going to have to give them time to learn this stuff. They can't get it all in 1 week. They can't get it all in 1 day. We can't come and just dump it on them and them know exactly what to do. We're going to have to be patient with these new converts. All right? Amen. James is not looking for compromise at all. He's saying Moses or Moshe will be preached to them every Sabbath. He's expecting them to learn. Now look at his third point though, and that was in verse 20. His third point is we're going to protect the assembly from the influences of the outside world that might still be hanging on to them. He said, I write unto them that they abstain from pollutions of idols, from fornication, from things strangled, and from blood. Each one of these things listed has to do with the influence of pagan religions. James states that these new converts are to understand that they are there to learn and not to instruct. There are some things they're going to have to drop at the door before they even come in because they are there to learn. We're not asking them to come in here and instruct us in some new, better, or more fun way. Right? James wants these new converts to understand that they would give them time and give them room to grow. But in coming in, it was important for them to know up front that they're not coming into that synagogue to instruct the Jews on how to worship Yahweh. James said, we're not looking for instruction from you on how to do it. We're not wanting to learn your ways. You need to come in and learn our ways. So it was very important to James to establish from the get-go, we're going to give them room to grow, but we're going to protect our assembly at the same time. We're not going to compromise with them. We're not looking to see if we can find a grounds for unity. The only grounds for unity we have is truth. And so they're going to have to leave things behind and come in so that we can protect our assembly. If we're looking for balance, here's the recipe. Stop harassing and annoying people who are coming in and wanting to learn. Give them room to learn. That's point number 2. Give everybody room to grow. Point number 3, protect the assembly. But we have to make sure that we can distinguish between those who are wanting to oppose truth and those who are wanting to learn truth. we have to deal with those two separately. If they oppose truth, then we oppose them. We love them but resist them. But if they're new and learning and want to learn, then we go back to steps 1 and 2 and we don't harass them and we give them room. Let me offer some, what I would call just some practical advice. Things that we don't have to protect the assembly from. We don't have to protect the assembly from mispronunciations. That falls into the category of annoying people and harassing people. On the way in this morning, Maria and I came in separate vehicles, so on the way in this morning, I was listening to a Jewish rabbi. Can't remember his name right now. Let me promise you, he pronounces those Hebrew words a lot different than I do. I'm not sure which one of us is wrong. Right? No, I know which one of us is wrong, correct? I mean, that's his language. He knows how to pronounce those words. So protecting the assembly from mispronunciations is really just ludicrous. Is it Yeshua, Yahshua, Yahushua? People get militant about it. Some people get mean and hateful about it. Listen, I love my Messiah, and I want to get his name right. But it may take him personally telling us before any of us knows for sure. The important thing is that we know that his name means Yahweh saves or Yahweh delivers. I can be patient with someone who's coming in that doesn't know what to call him. You may or may not like this, but I can be patient with someone coming in who still wants to call him Jesus. Still does call him Jesus. There may be some pagan connections to that name. I'm not sure. I do know that it's impossible for that not to be his name, or for that to be his name. It's impossible for that to be his name. I know that. It's impossible. The first recorded evidence of the name Jesus is the 1600s, so I know that's not his name. But I can be patient with someone who still calls him that if, listen to me, if we're talking about the same Messiah. If we're talking about the Messiah who lived in perfect obedience to Torah and expects his followers to learn it, keep it, and do it, then I'm all right with us having a different knowledge and understanding about his name. But now if you're saying that the Messiah you served eliminated the law, did away with the law, and we don't have to keep the law, and you're calling that Messiah Jesus, then I say you are serving the Antichrist. The Jesus you refer to is the Antichrist. Because the true Messiah walked in obedience to Torah, he kept Torah, and he expects his followers to learn, keep, and do Torah. Right? So there's the dividing that comes. It's not so much in how we pronounce his name, it's in how we view his character and who he is. We shouldn't harass people over pronunciations. If any man thinks he has knowledge, he knows nothing yet as he ought to know. Is it Yahweh or Yahuwah? I want to call him by his name properly. I do. And I have to go with what I think at this time to be proper from my study. But for anyone to make this a point of harassment and argument, it is absurd. If we're going to talk about him, let's talk about his power, his love, his majesty. When we get together, let's focus on those things. Listen to Malachi 3. Malachi 3:16 says this, "Then they that feared Yahweh spake often to one another, and Yahweh hearkened and heard it, and a book of remembrance was written down before him for them that feared Yahweh and that thought upon his name." Notice it doesn't say a book of remembrance was written for them that pronounced his name perfectly. Credit is given if we know he has a name. A lot of people don't even know he has a name.
Amen. Amen.
Right? And mercy is given because he knows that there's been great attempts to hide and distort his name.
Thank you.
What Yahweh wants us to do is to think on his name, to value his name, not to argue over his name. And when we think on his name, he writes that down in a book of remembrance so he can say, thank you for putting value on my name. You know, we could go, this really could happen. We could go back down into St. Clair County and get in a certain, it'd have to be the right mix, but you get the right mix of people down in St. Clair County, and somebody might say to me, hey, aren't you Buddy's boy? And I'd say, yeah, I sure am. And somebody next to him might say, Buddy's boy? Yeah. Well, I thought you were Sam's boy. Well, I am. But you just said you were Buddy's boy. Well, I am. And somebody else might say, now who are we talking about? Now, are you talking about that guy that lives up on Simmons Mountain? That little farm? Yeah. And you're his son? I am. Well, I thought his name was H.T. Well, it is. And somebody else would say, now wait a minute. You're saying that Sam, Buddy, and H.T. are all the same person? I am. Well, I thought his name was Harold. Well, it is. And somebody else would say, are we talking about the guy that worked at Usco? Yeah. You're his son? Yeah. Well, all we ever knew him by was Hondo. Well, that's right. Well, what do you call him? I call him Dad. You with me? Now, I can fellowship with every one of those people, and some of them are going to call him Sam. Because his grandfather called him Sam. So all of his uncles call him Sam. But his cousins and his friends, for some reason, call him Buddy. I don't have a clue why. Some folks called him H.T. People he worked with saw a John Wayne movie, thought he looked like John Wayne, started calling him Hondo. His mom and dad named him Harold. So all of these people know him by something different, but I can fellowship with every one of them, even though I call him Dad. Now, if any of them start referring to him in a disparaging way, any of them start calling him ugly names, then I know what I'm going to call them. An ambulance. Because I'm going to put some of this upside their head. You understand? I'm not going to sit there and listen to them run down this man with whom I have a relationship and whose integrity and character I know better than they. Right? I will protect him. But I'm not going to break fellowship because you choose to call him Sam. Even, you understand? Now, I am not saying that our Messiah or that our Creator, that either one of them have many names. They both have one name. One name, not many names. So I'm not saying that they have many names. What I am saying is, though, that what we have to learn to focus on in our assemblies. Yes, we want to learn, keep, do Torah. We want to learn everything we can about how to pronounce it correctly. But as we're on this journey, we don't need to, what's the phrase I'm looking for? Split hairs over what is the exact pronunciation of the name. And how Satan worked overtime and did a bang-up job of trying to hide and distort the names so that you and I would never know them. And so it's going to take a lot of effort to uncover it and to come to the knowledge of truth. But while we're going there, let's not beat each other up. If you think it's pronounced this way and somebody else thinks it's pronounced that way, rather than arguing over that, let's just get excited about who they are. How awesome they are, how much power they have. That they so loved, that Yahweh so loved us that He gave His only begotten Son. That He so loved the Father and was so obedient to the Father, He gave His life for us. Let's get excited about those things. I once had someone come up to me because I had mispronounced a word and they wanted to correct me. And I'm not above being corrected. Heck, I need correction a lot of times on English words, much less Hebrew words. Not kidding you. I once thought it was hors d'oeuvres. I had no idea it was hors d'oeuvres. None. That's the truth. We did not serve a lot of hors d'oeuvres on Simmons Mountain when I was growing up, so you can understand. And I was taught phonics, so I just read it. So understand, I'm open to correction. I did not mind that this person wanted to correct my pronunciation of a Hebrew word. What I did find disturbing is why they wanted to. Because they had been taught so many untruths in the denominational church that they'd gone to, they thought it was important to correct things like this. Well, I wasn't teaching an untruth. Teaching an untruth and mispronouncing a word are two separate things. I see people who have come out of paganistic falsehood and are beginning to walk in truth, but they're not lovable at all because they have an attitude that where they get over militant about every little thing. Some are running from assembly to assembly, searching for the perfect place to be. And by perfect, I mean they're looking for an assembly that agrees with everything they have come to believe at this point in their life 100% all the time. You're not going to find it. Well, if you do find it, it won't take but a few weeks before you discover something you don't quite agree on. Then you got to go look for another assembly. So they move from one to the other and to the next. Or they have decided that it's best to stay home and walk in truth by themselves, which is also a terrible, terrible mistake and a violation of Scripture. They've become like that old Quaker who, sitting at breakfast one morning, said to his wife, "I fear that the whole world hath gone crazy except for me and thee." And then he looked up from his cereal and said, "And sometimes I worry about thee." There are a lot of people who become that way, who think they have a corner on truth and nobody knows anything but them. They pick and pick and pick at every little thing until they are not a joy to be around. Or worse yet, they are so picky, no fellowship can possibly ever live up to their unrealistic standard. Mispronunciation is just one of the issues. Feast and Moedims become another. The dates and the times of the feast become a point of contention among so many. And the truth is, here's the truth. We all have knowledge, but no man knows anything yet as he ought to know. Satan knew how important and knows how important Yahweh's calendar is. And again, he's done a bang-up job of confusing the minds around the world about how to calculate Yahweh's calendar. Those who want to know the truth have to struggle greatly to uncover what has been hidden and distorted. And there are umpteen opinions of how to arrive at the correct date. And I've studied hours upon hours upon hours, and you may have done so too. And we may disagree on the exact time that a Moedim should be observed, but rather than talking about that disagreement, why don't we talk about the things we don't disagree about? We don't disagree that the exact time is important. We don't disagree that we should learn them, keep them, and do them. We don't disagree that these Moedim are revelations of the Messiah. We don't disagree that they are Yahweh's feast, not the Jews' feast. Let's focus on that. We may disagree when that exact time is, but that's no reason to break fellowship. And that is no reason to harass somebody. And that's no reason to annoy somebody. If I'm going to do it tonight because in my heart I believe that tonight's the night, and you're going to do it tomorrow because in your heart you believe that tomorrow's the night, fine, let's just do it. Yes. Until we all have perfect knowledge. Amen. There has to be a balance. We should not harass and annoy people who are wanting to walk in truth. We should give each other room to grow. We should exhort and encourage and even correct and instruct, but not in an adversarial way to those who are part of the assembly. We have adversaries. They are the ones who are saying that the teachings of Torah are outdated. They are the ones who are saying that the teachings of Torah should be forgotten or destroyed. They are the ones who resist Yahweh as the true Elohim and Yeshua as the true Messiah. We love them, but those are the ones we have to oppose with every fiber of our being. We are soldiers in the kingdom of Yahweh who cannot afford to put down our weapon because the opposers of truth are everywhere. We're soldiers in the kingdom of heaven who cannot afford to lay down our weapon. We're to contend for the truth with every fiber of our being. But neither can we afford to continue to take pop shots at one another. Stand up. I love you, and I'm glad I'm on this journey with you. And I'm glad we are an assembly of Yahweh, that He is the one we serve. I am glad that we are learning truth of Torah together, and we're learning how to keep it and do it. I am thankful for that. I love you. Yahweh bless you and keep you. Yahweh make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yahweh lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. As His name is put upon you, so shall He bless you. Amen. You're dismissed. Have a great day.